Imagine this. It's early morning in mid-December 1981. You're somewhere deep in Shropshire, waking before dawn. You walk towards the window, still half asleep, and then you stop. The glass isn't just fogged or lightly frosted, it's frozen solid. You wipe a small circle clear and stare outside. Everything is white, still, silent. You check the thermometer. Minus 25 degrees Celsius. That's not a wind chill, not an exaggeration. It's the coldest December temperature ever recorded in England, and this wasn't just one terrible night. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would grip Britain for 7 relentless weeks, testing the country in ways not seen since the winter of 1963. People would later call it the Big Snow of '82, but back then, there was no name for it. It was simply winter and survival. What made it so frightening was how quietly it all began. Early December had been mild. In Aberdeen, temperatures actually reached 15 degrees. People walked the high street in light coats, scarves loose, hands free. Winter felt optional, something you could choose to participate in. Then on December 7th, everything changed. The wind turned, blowing straight from the north. Arctic air poured down from Scandinavia, a relentless, invisible river of cold. By the morning of the 8th, heavy snow had fallen across southern England, Wiltshire, Berkshire, the outskirts of London. Roads became sheets of ice overnight, airports closed. Trains stopped running. Telephone lines sagged under the weight of the ice, and almost no one had been warned. That Tuesday morning, thousands of people left home for work as usual. Many of them never made it. Cars slid helplessly into ditches. Buses stalled halfway up hills, unable to get traction. Motorways became long, silent lines of abandoned vehicles. A normal commute stretched into hours or, for many, ended entirely. By December 11th, another blizzard arrived. This time, London took the worst of it. Snow piled deep in the suburbs, burying cars and blocking front doors. Even Parliament struggled. It was reported that the Queen herself was stranded for hours in a country pub, unable to get back to Windsor Castle. No one was spared, no matter who you were. Then came December 13th, the night Britain truly froze solid. Temperatures didn't just drop, they collapsed. Minus 18, minus 20. And lower still. Shrewsbury recorded that astonishing minus 25.2 degrees Celsius, the coldest December temperature England had ever seen. Wales dropped below minus 22. Records that had stood for over 100 years fell in a single night. The cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was destructive. Out at sea, gale-force winds turned the snow into blinding storms. Ships sank in the English Channel. Coastal sea defenses failed. And on December 19th, tragedy struck when the Penly lifeboat capsized during a rescue attempt in hurricane-force winds. 16 lives were lost. The entire country mourned, but the cold did not pause. It moved into homes. Ice formed on the inside of windows, thick enough to scrape away with a knife. Your breath hung in the air indoors. Central heating was still a luxury for many. Most families relied on a single coal fire downstairs. One warm room in the whole house. Everyone gathered there, wearing every jumper they owned. Blankets draped over their shoulders, hands stretched toward flames that barely warmed you unless you sat right on top of them. Upstairs rooms became unlivable, Arctic zones. At night, people slept under mountains of blankets. Clothes for the next day were laid out at the foot of the bed so they would not be frozen stiff in the morning. Some people even slept in their coats. Not because they were poor, but because they had to. And the snow just kept coming. December 20th, then the 27th. By Christmas Day, a thick, white blanket lay across Lincolnshire and North London. But the worst part wasn't the depth of the snow, it was that nothing melted. Temperatures stayed below freezing for weeks on end. New snow simply fell on top of the old, layer after layer piled up, rivers froze over, harbors iced up. Along parts of the coast, even the sea froze, leaving huge blocks of ice stranded on the beaches at low tide. Inland, the drifts rose higher than hedges. Whole villages vanished from view, roads disappeared completely. That meant no deliveries, no way out. Families had to prepare as best they could. They stocked up on tinned food and extra bread. Milk bottles were lined up outside because the fridge couldn't hold them all, and it was colder outside anyway. When shops closed, they stayed closed. Queues formed outside bakeries before dawn. People would wait for an hour just for a single loaf of bread. Sugar disappeared from the shelves. Butter was rationed quietly. If you lived in one of the cut-off villages, you had to rely on whatever you had stored in the pantry. Fresh milk vanished. Condensed milk and tea became normal. It had a strange, sweet taste, but it was the taste of endurance. Then the power cuts started. Hundreds of thousands of homes lost electricity. No lights, no heating, unless you had a fire. No television. Just candles and the glow of the coal fire. Families played cards and board games. They told stories. They sat close together for warmth. When the power returned, even for just a few hours, people cheered. For the children, it was an almost magical time. Schools closed for weeks. Snow forts rose in gardens, taller than fences. Sledges were dusted off from sheds. When you ran out of sledges, tea trays vanished from kitchens. Every street with a slope became a toboggan run. Your gloves would freeze stiff. Your clothes would get soaked through, but nobody cared. The snow was so deep in places you could walk on top of hedges. Drifts grew taller than adults. It was a strange mix of magic and hardship, all at the same time. Behind the scenes, though, life was brutal. Hospitals filled with hypothermia cases. Doctors trudged for miles through deep snow to reach their patients. Farmers lost thousands of animals to the cold. Helicopters from the RAF were called in to drop supplies to isolated farms. But you heard very few complaints. People just got on with it. New Year's Day brought a glimmer of false hope. A brief thaw with rain. But then the cold returned, even harsher than before. On January 7th, a blizzard buried Wales under 36 hours of relentless snow, driven by fierce winds. Drifts reached 20 feet high, entire towns were cut off. The army was deployed. Helicopters hovered over stranded communities. Local radio stations became lifelines, coordinating rescues and passing messages. Neighbors became the real emergency service. Then on January 10th, the final record was set. Minus 27.2 degrees in Braemar, Scotland. England was not far behind. Breathing the air felt sharp, painful. Exposed skin would go numb in seconds, and still life continued. The postman still did his rounds on foot. The milkman still tried to make his deliveries, because that's what you did, and that's what people remember most. Not the temperatures, not the records, but the people. Strangers helping push cars out of the snow. Elderly neighbors being checked on daily. Community halls opened up, offering warmth, a hot drink, and conversation. When everyone was freezing, asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness. It was just a part of survival. By mid-January, the cold finally began to loosen its grip. The snow slowly melted, roads reappeared. Britain breathed a collective sigh of relief. When milk arrived on the doorstep, unfrozen for the first time in weeks, people actually cheered. The winter of 1982 wasn't just a cold spell. It was a lesson in resilience. We had less. But somehow, it felt like we had more. If you lived through it, you never, ever forgot it. What do you remember from that winter? The frozen windows? The candlelight? The deafening silence of a world covered in snow? Share your story in the comments. And if these memories matter to you, please like this video and subscribe. It helps us keep these stories alive, because some winters don't just pass. They stay with us forever.